Exodus chapter 4 is famous for its description of the signs God gives to Moses to perform before Pharaoh. But did you know that this chapter also records a near-death experience where God almost kills him? Now, before we can get to the near-death moment in question, we need to take a quick step back and set the stage. This scene takes place after Moses has settled in Midian, having fled Egypt after killing an Egyptian in Exodus chapter 2. In Exodus chapter 3, Moses encounters the burning bush, is introduced to God, and receives the divine name Yahweh. Then Moses famously hems and haws at the instruction of Yahweh to return to Egypt and deliver the Israelites, asking questions about what to do if they don't believe him, in response to which God gives Moses the 3 signs: turning his staff into a snake, causing his hand to become leprous and then healthy again, and turning the water of the Nile to blood. God also agrees to send Aaron with Moses as a spokesman. However, stuck in between this famous scene on Mount Horeb and Moses' return to Egypt are 3 sticky verses you may be less familiar with. The NRSV translates verses 24 through 26 as follows. On the way, at a place where they spent the night, the Lord met him and tried to kill him. But Ziporah took a flint and cut off her son's foreskin, and touched Moses' feet with it and said, "Truly you are a bridegroom of blood to me." So he let him alone. It was then, she said, a bridegroom of blood by circumcision. This difficult scene has come to be commonly referred to as Zipporah at the inn, a name influenced by the King James Version, which translates the more ambiguous "at a place where they spent the night" as "in the inn," following the Septuagint's use of kataluma, meaning inn, instead of the Hebrew malon, which is used elsewhere to describe a lodging place or camp for the night. While the description inn helps create a more defined narrative setting, tidying up the ambiguity of the location, it's highly unlikely that Moses and family would have made their way to an inn in the middle of the desert of Midian. The complications of this scene are numerous, but today we're going to deal with the big 4. Who wants to kill who? Why does Yahweh suddenly want to kill him? Whose feet are involved? And why does the blood of the circumcision save him? Let's start at the top and work our way down the list. Who wants to kill who? On a first reading, this complication may seem like it isn't that complicated. Yahweh wants to kill Moses, right? However, if you look at the Hebrew or Greek texts, things get a little more complicated. While the Hebrew and Greek agree that a divine being seeks to do some killing here, they disagree on exactly who wants to do the killing, with the Hebrew using the divine name in verse 24 when it states Yahweh sought to kill him, while the Septuagint softens the scene by having it be an angel of the Lord. The insertion of angel or messenger language into scenes of divine appearances is a common way ancient scribes and translators sought to soften uncomfortable or anthropomorphic scenes. In this case, providing a way for the Greek translators to soften Yahweh's sudden wrath by having it be the action of an angel, though the end result remains the same. A divine being wants to kill someone, but who? Here, neither text is clear. In both cases, providing an ambiguous third-person him. Is this him Moses, the chosen deliverer of Israel? Or is this him Moses and Zipporah's son? The text of the passage cannot provide us a definitive answer to this question, as the only names that appear in this story are Zipporah and Yahweh, neither of whom are the him who's about to die. So why does Yahweh suddenly want to kill him? The scene of verses 24 through 26 presents a sudden and drastic change of events. Moses, who's just received the divine name for the first time, who's been commissioned to deliver the Israelites, and has been given signs to perform to show his divine selection, is potentially about to be killed by the very God who chose him. Or alternatively, Moses' son is about to be killed for some other altogether unknown reason. What happened that led to this divine wrath? Many commentators and ancient interpreters have focused in on the status of Moses' son as uncircumcised as a potential reason for this divine wrath, seeing in this story an emphasis on the importance of the command for fathers to circumcise their sons on the 8th day. The Septuagint seems to support this emphasis, providing an additional detail lacking in the Hebrew text, as it states that Ziporah sought to circumcise the acrobustia of her son, a word that can mean both the foreskin or uncircumcision. As the son would obviously need to be uncircumcised for Zipporah to circumcise him, this extra emphasis seemingly reflects an early awareness by the Septuagint translators that the scene needed some extra detail to explain the sudden wrath of Yahweh, driving home the point that Moses, his son, is uncircumcised, and pushing emphasis towards this as the cause for this sudden desire for either Moses or his son's death. However, others think this hymn refers to the son of Moses and Zipporah, connecting this scene to the promise of the death of the Egyptian firstborns seen in Exodus 4:23. So why exactly does Yahweh suddenly want to kill him? Unfortunately, the text just doesn't tell us. But whose feet are involved? In most English translations, this seems like a silly question. Just look again at the NRSV. Having circumcised her son, Zipporah touches the son's foreskin to Moses' feet, right? Maybe. The Hebrew is less clear on exactly what is happening here, as it simply attaches the third person pronominal suffix his to feet, leaving ambiguity as to just whose feet are being touched. It could be Moses, as he is potentially the subject of Yahweh's anger and the one being sought. It could be the son, who's just been circumcised. Or the him here could be God or the angel of the Lord. Again, it's unclear and complicated. Unfortunately, the Septuagint doesn't provide much help here either, as the detail of events is slightly changed, with Zipporah not touching anyone's feet with the foreskin. Instead, we read, she fell to his feet. However, the core confusion still remains, as it's unclear whether she falls to Moses' feet, her son's feet, or the angel of the Lord's. And that's not all. There is another point of ambiguity that must be mentioned in this whirlwind of a story. And that is that in biblical Hebrew, the word for feet can also be used euphemistically for penis, a use possibly seen in the story of Ruth when she uncovers Boaz's feet in Ruth chapter 3. So it's possible that what the Hebrew text describes here is Zipporah touching the foreskin of her son to his, that is either the son's, Moses's, Yahweh's, or the angel of the Lord's feet. Yeah, it's weird. The last question is, why does any of this work? Why does the sudden, rough circumcision of the son by Zipporah and her either touching it to his feet, or falling at his feet, or feet, stop the divine wrath that sought the death of him? Additionally, what's going on with Zipporah's declaration about a bridegroom of blood, which appears as a totally different phrase in the Septuagint, where instead she says, the blood of the circumcision of my child is staunched. It should also be noted that the Septuagint could be read to say that the angel of the Lord went away because she said, the blood of the circumcision of my child is staunched. As you probably expect by this point, the scholarly consensus regarding why this saves him is shoulder shrugging. But here are 4 common arguments. Some see the success of her actions, and possibly the story as a whole, as an etiology to explain the phrase bridegroom of blood, and the possibility that marriage presented the proper time for grooms who were not circumcised as infants to be circumcised, thereby becoming a bridegroom of blood. Some interpret this story as indicative of Yahweh's character as an old fertility god, connecting this scene with Yahweh's desire for the firstborn and the call for the deaths of the firstborn of Egypt in Exodus 4:23. And understand the actions of Zipporah in performing the circumcision and calling aloud, you are a bridegroom of blood to me, as a magical act, wherein the circumcision stands as the sacrifice, and the newly circumcised child is effectively married to Yahweh. Some think this story and the mention of damim, sometimes rendered as blood guilt, is connected with Moses' blood guilt for his manslaughter of the Egyptian, and that the blood of the circumcision cleanses Moses from this blood guilt, while some others identify a connection between this moment and the Passover, seeing a parallel between the shedding of blood which staves off death here and the shedding of the Passover lamb's blood which spares the Israelites from the angel of death in Exodus 12. Nobody really knows. All we know for sure from the text is that after a quick and rough circumcision in the desert, Ziporah saves the day. Until next time.